Hey there. Hello. You. Hey. Hi. Welcome back to another episode of the 1-0 podcast. I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Lexi Linderman.
Penn State just wrapped up its second week of spring practice. We'll dive into that a little bit. Penn State also, right before we started recording this podcast, had some recent updates for the blue-white game, blue-white practice, whatever you want to consider it. Lexi, I'll start with spring ball. Again, ending week 2, Matt Campbell's first spring ball at Penn State. A lot of new. You want to look at the quarterback room, an almost all new quarterback room. You have one guy holding it down, Jack Lambert, who they also call Lambo. You have a lot of different things, a lot of, scheme installations, things like that. So I'll ask you, Lexi, again, what do you think makes a successful spring for Penn State and Matt Campbell?
Yeah, so Campbell was actually asked about this on Tuesday, and he didn't really give a solid answer. It just kind of sounds like he wants players to really get those one-on-one reps and learn from them. I think a big thing with practice under Matt Campbell is a lot of it is one-on-one. Even winter workouts, a lot of it is one-on-one. And so I think the biggest thing that he wants to happen in spring ball is to, you're going to win those reps, you're going to lose those reps. And it's like, how do you handle that? Like, he wants his players to learn how to handle that. Basically, it's vaguely what he said. But I think a successful spring ball for Penn State is really just to get these players comfortable in Taylor Mauther's offense and D'Anton Lynn's defense. Obviously, do I think they're going to be fully installed by the time we hit the summer? No, I don't. But I do think a big issue last year was how the defense struggled to learn Jim Knowles' defense and how tough that kind of was to install. And so I think it's going to be very important that these players really get a hang of D'Anton Lynn's defense by the time fall camp rolls around. And so I think that is one thing that will definitely mark a successful spring ball for Penn State. And the early reviews on Lynn have been really good. Terry Smith called him one of the better coordinators he's been around. Matt Campbell said he's a really great teacher. Just watching him work, he's been very impressed, and kind of talked about how that comes from his days coaching in the NFL, things like that. But so I think the early marks on Lynn have been super high, which is a good sign. All the players seem to really like his defense, which is also a really good sign, because this was the one kind of splash hire. You could say that Matt Campbell made. A lot of the guys were brought over with him from Iowa State, or were guys that Lynn knew, when he had to make some hires. And so I think D'Anton Lynn was the splash hire. And so you kind of really, if you're Matt Campbell, you want that to pan out really well. And I think it will pan out pretty well, considering how much Lynn knows about Penn State. He's obviously had success at UCLA, USC. I think this is going to be a really good fit. But we also thought that about Jim Knowles. So you don't really know what can happen, but I do think successful spring, you get the defense comfortable with D'Anton Lynn, and also the non-Iowa State guys kind of get really comfortable with Mauther's offense. I think it'll be a little bit easier on that end of the ball, because there's a lot of guys on offense that already know it, like Rocco Becht. He can help Kobe Howard, hey, this is how this works. Same with Carson Hansen helping out the running backs, things like that. I just think, and even Brett Eskildon and Chase Sowell, they already know Taylor Mauther's offense. So I think that's going to be really crucial in helping the guys who either didn't play at Penn State or Iowa State last year, or played at Penn State last year. I think that's going to be a really big help for them. So I think the biggest thing is just getting more comfortable with the schemes, because, they have to play football in 5 months. Wait, it's April now, so 4 months.
I stopped counting. Graduation is nearing. I don't count anymore, so I can't even answer there.
In a little less than 5 months, they have to play a football game, and so I think it's going to be really important. They really need to start practicing those schemes really in depth, and so I think that's going to be really important for this spring.
Yeah, I think the thing that I keep going back to is that Penn State is essentially in the same situation that's kind of been in the last few years when you talk about getting a new defensive coordinator, or, when Andy Kotelnicki came, getting a new offensive coordinator, trying to get used to a new scheme, trying to get guys acclimated with the team. Obviously, this is the most turnover that you've seen at Penn State in obviously about,
13 years.
Yeah, there we go, for obvious reasons. This is a very new team, and I think it's a lot different than a lot of different teams. You can look at, let's say your SMUs of the world, things like that, teams that bring in a lot of transfers. I think it is a lot different than the way that Matt Campbell has really overhauled this entire roster. You also have a team that was literally broken apart because of how the end of last season was. You're getting some guys coming back, namely, you got a Kobe Howard come back. As we talked about, Jack Lambert is back, obviously, running it back. Quentin Martin Jr., guys like that, Cooper Cousins. But you're trying to mesh all of that together, and the timeline really isn't as good as maybe a coach would want it to be. But, that's college football. Mm-hmm. college football is changing, as we talk about. I mean, it is something that will always evolve with one portal window as well. That changes things as well, even though it does forces guys to be on campus a lot earlier, a lot more time for that bonding. There's a lot that is changing. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how Penn State approaches that, how Penn State attacks that. I think when it comes to D'Anton Lynn, I think that'll be a very important part. I mean, you look at, again, Jim Knowles like this. I think Jim Knowles, by the end of the season, he figured it out. I think I was like, oh, okay, that's the Jim Knowles that, became the highest coordinator in college football. That's the Jim Knowles that, won a national championship with Ohio State. But it's just his scheme took a little too long for guys to get accustomed to. I mean, I think it's a lot of thinking. It is a lot of, preparation and things like that. And some guys maybe weren't ready for that. I know when you talk about D'Anton Lynn and, him just talking about that obnoxious communication, he wants guys to just be able to go. Like, he doesn't want guys to have to sit here and think and think and think. When they knock out all of this in the spring, hammer down everything, I think it can, really result in a really good defense. But, it really just depends how everything goes together. D'Anton Lynn, his track record, obviously, both at UCLA, both at USC, he knows how to build a defense. He now takes this to Penn State, who has historically and in recent memory had a really good defense. This is a really good opportunity for him. I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how guys mesh in. I think there are a few guys that I will be interested in seeing, mostly really the defensive backfield. I'm very interested in that defensive backfield. You look at a guy like Zion Tracy, who Matt Campbell has been very glowing about, talking about his versatility, kind of talked about the fact that he could be one of the best corners in the country. He could be one of the best safeties in the country. He said he's one of the best football players that he's ever coached. And obviously that's a very glowing compliment. But, I mean, I do think Zion Tracy has been good in his time at Penn State. I think he's a guy you don't really like. And one part of the cornerback is if you're not watching them trailing the whole time, they've likely done a good job. I mean, I think Zion Tracy's been a quality corner. I think his ability in the nickel has been very valuable for Penn State. And if he's able to take that step up, become, one of the best corners or defensive backs or things like that in the country, that would be scary. Not just because it's Zion Tracy doing that. It's because when you look around, you have your, Darius Dixon, Davion Collins, who I think will take another step this season, Jameer Joseph, who I think will obviously play a lot this season, and I think he's going to shock people. I think he's a guy, you saw the flashes at Villanova, right. Yeah. You saw the flashes against Clemson, but I mean, I think that his potential is really up there. I mean, I think, again, when you pair that with a guy like Darius Dixon has a chance to become one of the best cornerbacks in the country. I mean, he's, comes from modern day. He's used to that, being able to be nationally ranked among the best of the best, competing with the best of the best. That's something he's been able to do. So, I mean, I think that'll be interesting. I think if you're able to get that scheme together, I think if Penn State is really able to feel comfortable by the time they get to the fall, I mean, I think that'll be really good. I mean, if you're looking ahead at the schedule, you play Marshall, you play Maryland to end the season, you play Michigan, of course. We'll see how they are, obviously, with Kyle Whittingham, and, a few others this season. But I think it'll be very important to get that defense together. I mean, the offense as well, but, I mean, I do believe defense does win championships. I mean, you can see how the national championship ended with Carson back, things like that. So I think that'll be really key moving forward.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, the defensive backfield is everyone is so sure this is going to be a really great defensive backfield. I don't think there's any question about that. The talent that they have, and then you add in Marcus Neal, Jeremiah Cooper, those are they were two of the best guys in the portal, for, safety, cornerback positions, stuff like that. And, obviously they're both Matt Campbell guys. They both come with him. And, they're both going to be really good. Watching Marcus Neal at practice last week, I was like, wow, this dude just looks different. This dude looks really good at football. And so I think when you add that with all Davion Collins, with Zion Tracy, with Darius Dixon, with Jameer Joseph, the list just goes on and on. That is just scary. That is just scary. And then you have to look at the defensive line, and it's completely different from last year. Cornerback and safety, you had a little bit of carryover because Terry Smith stayed. He was able to, kind of recruit some of those guys to stay. And it was a little bit easier just because they know him, they trust him, they want to play for him. But the defensive line, it's very young. You've got Max Scrambley, you've got Alex McPherson. We've talked about this a lot. Yvonne Kamaju, and now you add LeVar Arrington to the mix. And Matt Campbell was asked on Tuesday kind of about, LeVar Arrington, where he's at, what their plans are for him, because he kind of made that switch from linebacker to defensive end this offseason. Ikaika Malloy said when we spoke to him in media that one time that he's going to operate a little bit of a hybrid role, but it seems like it's going to be a lot of defensive end for him. And so Campbell said, he's explosive, he's dynamic, and they're trying to find the best way to get him on the field to help the team and also help LeVar. So, he could be a guy that's playing a lot. And so I just think the defensive end room a lot, I think this spring it would be good to get those young guys a lot of reps because, Max Granville is still kind of limited, so he's not really going to get those reps. But, guys like Alex McPherson, guys like Yvonne, they still have room to grow. Obviously, Yvonne had an incredible freshman year, but, those reps for LeVar, too, are going to be super important. And then the defensive tackle spots, also an unknown thing, at least for us, for sure. I mean, obviously, these are guys that Ikaika knows, Lynn kind of knows, and so it's just, it's going to be interesting to see, how that looks, because I think cornerback, so sure about that, but, defensive line, a little bit more of a question mark. So it'll be interesting to see. I think this spring, getting that all to mesh and mold together is going to be super important, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the edge position as a whole will be very important this year, which, obviously it always is. Mm-hmm. But I think this year the edge position will have the most production that it's had. I think, a problem with Penn State guys, edge rushers when they get into the draft, you're denied Dennis Suttons of the world, Chop Robinson. It wasn't Abdul Carter. Of course, he's the one unicorn kind of out of that. But it was Adisa Isaac. But your lack of production.
Yeah. And you can throw Oweh in there too.
Yeah, exactly. Your lack of production. And I don't think, it was, a lack of talent. I think it was part of the scheme. They didn't need to, be 15 sack, 12 sack guys. Obviously not 15, but, 10 to 12 sack guys every single season. Part of that obviously could due to, them just not being able to finish. That is important, but clearly, it has all worked out so far. Chop Robinson has started a really good career. Abdul Carter started slow, but he's going to have a really good career. Denied Dennis Sutton, it'll be interesting to see. But he was probably one of the more productive ones. Mm-hmm. It was just you had those moments where it's okay, where's Denied Dennis Sutton when you need him, things like that. And I don't really think it was a matter of him just not showing up. I just think that, you are comparing it to, games where we have, 3 tackles for a lot. He'll totally stuff the stat sheet, and then another game it's okay, you're not seeing, which valid concern, something you can think about. But I think this year, and you look at who you have on the edge, paired with the fact that Ikaika Malloy, you obviously the first person you think of Leatu Latu. He was incredible at UCLA, and that was someone that Ikaika mentioned when he talked about LeVar Arrington. That opportunity to come off the edge, to make an impact, to be a dominant rusher. I think that's what LeVar Arrington can be. I think that when coming into Penn State, obviously carrying the tradition of Stick City, there are a lot of expectations, and what we've seen in the past 3 editions of Stick City is move down, get on the defensive line or come off the edge, stuff the stat sheet. Obviously, Michael Parsons didn't do that until he got to Dallas. Dallas Cowboys, of course, for anyone who doesn't know who the Dallas Cowboys are. But, at this point, I think that'll be a really good opportunity for him. It's not like they're strangers. Obviously, he was recruited by UCLA as a recruit. He was recruited by most of the country, essentially. And I think, I'm very interested to see how he is. I don't know if he starts, but I do think that him sitting behind guys like Yvonne Kamaju and Max Granville could be really good. I think that Yvonne Kamaju, again, I think this will be a really good season. He's caught everyone by surprise. I remember at this time last spring where defensive line coach Deion Barnes is, talking about Yvonne Kamaju, and I'm thinking, I did not expect to hear Yvonne Kamaju at this point. He came in in the spring, came on strong, and it carried over. It was, very interesting to see his, rise throughout the season. He looked like a guy that's high motor, knows how to make plays, can get in the backfield. I think that'll be interesting. And then, you get the chance to add, your Iowa State guys to that mix, whether it's outside in the interior, of course. So I think those will all be very interesting to see together. Again, I do think that edge rusher position could be really crucial. Max Granville is a guy that, could, when he is healthy, become, one of those premier talents. I think that what he showed his freshman year was absolutely incredible. I think, that'll be kind of interesting to see kind of throughout that.
Yeah, when you're one of those guys, it's you're coming in for Abdul Carter in the Fiesta Bowl. Obviously, you have talent. That's undeniable. And I think Penn State losing him last year, I think, hurt a little more than people probably realize.
For sure.
Obviously, like, Yvonne kind of stepped up to the plate, but then it's like your other edge, like, and then Chaz Coleman, obviously now at Tennessee, but he stepped up to the plate a little bit as well. But then he got hurt. Wasn't as productive in Big Ten play. Like, they kind of needed Max Granville because no one had experience besides Zariah Fisher and Denai Denison. And then out of those two, it's like Jailyn Harvey, Chaz Coleman, Yvonne Kamaju, and Yvonne was the only one. And Chaz, of course, but Yvonne was the one who really kind of stuck out toward the end of the season. Chaz, of course, still has incredible talent. We all know that. I'm sure he's going to do great things at Tennessee. But, like, I think if they have Max Granville last year, like, the edge rusher position doesn't seem as much as a glaring issue because I think, like, for the first, few games of the season, like, they were just not getting pressure. Like, Denai Denison was blocking punts and going crazy sometimes, but, like, otherwise, like, there was kind of like no pressure. It kind of felt like sometimes Zane Durant obviously didn't have as big of a year on the stat sheet as a lot of us were expecting. And so I think edge rusher is going to be super important. I think, yes, it's a young room right now for Penn State, but I also think the young talent is really great young talent. And, like, a lot of times it's hard to find that, because there's lots of guys who are young and you just kind of have to redshirt them. They're just not ready. But these guys seem, all ready. And they've all had, some years of experience, a year or two of experience under their belt. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of goes. So.
Yeah, and I think that, kind of brings up a good point, being ready to go. I mean, part of that is the physical aspect. I mean, I think everyone on social media, and me personally, I've seen the off-season pictures. As an NBA fan, I've seen Kyle Lowry every single season. People tell me that Kyle Lowry is ready to go. Kyle Lowry is in the best shape of his life. The man is like 40. He does not play. Like, let's be real now. So pictures can be a little deceiving, of course. But I do think that Penn State has seen a lot of growth from some of their players physically. Obviously, the one many people are talking about is Kobe Howard. I will say my response to that is, he was a freshman.
Right.
Like, naturally, he's going to make that leap the older he gets. He's, growing, like, I think that's, basic, basic body. I'm just saying, I think that both programs were really good programs. I think that, when you see new eras come in, it's kind of funny to see everyone just like, yeah, the last people, they were terrible. And then it's like, wait a minute, I thought there was like the best strength coach ever. I thought that, and it was funny, though, to kind of think about that because we know Chuck Losey last summer is like, this is the best summer we've had physically. Like, we're, doing this, we're doing that. I mean, but I also think that they have two different philosophies. I think that looks different for them. Chuck Losey has had just freak athletes. Like, that's what he's had. And whether that's from recruiting, whether that's from, actually growing guys when they get there, he's had guys that, are kind of jack of all trades. And I think that has its advantages. But it also has your advantages to have your big guys, your buff guys. You look at everyone on the roster sheet, it looks like they've all gained like 20, 30 pounds. Mm-hmm. Like, both are, it's your philosophy. That's, we kind of talk about last week how, Ryan Clanton's like, there's no particular wrong philosophy when you compare him to, Phil Troutwayne and, what other guys were doing, compared to the new staffers. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just kind of what you're going to do. How do you fit to the scheme? I think that'll all be interesting to see. You look at Kobe Howard again, like, this could be a really big year for him. We all watched him not play for that first half of the season. Everyone's like, where's Kobe Howard? Where's Kobe Howard? He goes in, he does something, comes back out. He goes in, he does something, he comes back out. And then he comes on at the end of the season. I think this will be a really big year for him. I think that he could even have a better year than most people think, only because when you think about Eskelsen and Soul, obviously, there, that does kind of cloud the receiver room a little bit. Like, last year, he was the best receiver on the roster. I don't really think that was an argument. Am I missing someone? Like, I don't think that was an argument personally. I'm just saying, but I think that could be a really good year for him, a really big year for him. But I kind of wanted to transition into the news that we got right before we entered the studio. Penn State has finally released some news for the blue-white practice. They're not saying blue-white game, which is something we've used a long time. Blue-white game. That's how
capital
you say it.
G.
There we go. Capital G. So Saturday, April 25th, 1 p.m. If anyone wants to know, it's free. It's always been free, obviously, unless I'm missing something. But yeah, it'll be a practice. That's kind of what we knew. That's what Matt Campbell kind of said it would be. Every team has kind of been reluctant in the past few years to actually have a spring game for whatever reason that may be. I wouldn't really say recruiting at this point because it's like there's no other window. Like maybe your grad transfers leave, but if they're going to leave, they're already going to leave. So I don't really think that makes much of a difference. There's also a kids combine the Friday before, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So kids, if you're watching this, parents, if you're watching this, if your kid is in the 8th grade or below, you could participate. That's the word. You could participate. Maybe little Johnny runs a 4.2. Maybe little Johnny has a 13-foot broad jump. I think the first one would be more realistic. But I think it'll be a blue-white weekend. Again, a lot of festivities. They have to have the blue-white game or blue-white whatever. Obviously, it'll be Penn State's 15 practice closing out spring ball. Lexi, I mean, just your thoughts. What do you think about how Penn State's kind of shifted things and, the future of the blue-white game /weekend /practice /extravaganza /whatever else you want to name it?
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but did Iowa State have a spring game ever? That's the thing is, I don't really know. Because if they didn't, then it makes complete sense why Matt Campbell does not want to do a spring practice or a spring game, sorry. We'll wait for April. Let's see.
I mean, I believe they do.
Do they?
What I remember was just the fact that they didn't really want to have it.
Okay.
I don't know if that was through the rumor mill or not. I can't really confirm that right now. But, I mean, that was kind of, they've right. had it. It's just a matter of teams don't really want to do it anymore, but they kind of have to. Yeah,
I think that's the exact case here. It's Matt Campbell definitely does not want to do a game. And honestly, with the way this roster looks right now injury-wise, I honestly don't really blame him that much. You've got so many guys either limited or out, like Brett Eskeldson, Chase Sowell, Anthony Donko, and Rapley, Gabe Burkle. The list just goes on and on. Max Ramos limited, Tony Rojas is limited. And so it's you don't really want to put, Rocco Beck's limited as well, obviously. You don't really want to put more guys at risk by kind of playing an actual game. And I think that's fair. I think that is fair. And I think it'll be interesting to see, what kind of practice this actually is. If this is just the same 2 hours that we saw last Tuesday, I don't really think that that's that interesting for fans. Obviously it's, a little interesting, but I think you got to have some kind of excitement, whether that's, one-on-ones, a lot of them, just something to kind of, get the crowd excited and, kind of amped up. Because Matt Campbell's talked about a lot that it's really important for the team to go and play in Beaver Stadium because this is just a much bigger stadium than a lot of the Iowa State guys are used to. It's going to be a lot louder than a lot of the Iowa State guys are used to. And so I think if you're really trying to replicate that, you got to have, fans there. It's one thing to just go play in the stadium, but then you got to add the noise. And so it's you got to do something that, makes the crowd actually want to go in the game. And, go into watch this practice. And right now I don't know, based off the very limited details they gave, I don't know if fans are going to want to do that. I mean, I think they will this year just because they don't know any of these guys. They just want to see these guys play football, and that's totally fair. But moving forward, I don't know if this is sustainable. But I do think, because they called it a blue-white weekend when they first announced it, I do think that they kind of did a good enough job making it a weekend, with the kids combined. They're also having an apparel and football equipment sale in Pagula the day of the blue-white game, assuming they're trying to get rid of some of that Nike stuff before July 1st hits. But you can go and check that out as well. So I think they did add a few festivities to kind of make it more into a weekend. Do I think they need to add maybe a little bit more? Probably, if you want to keep having people actually come up for this practice. Because if it just kind of stays like this, no one's going to want to drive 3 hours to come to this, it's just not, I mean, it is still free, but I don't know. I just don't really see that being sustainable long term. And Pat Kraft has kind of talked at length about, or James Franklin's kind of talked about how Pat Kraft has talked about at length about how it's really important for the community to have that weekend, to have that game. And so I don't think it's going away, but I do think it's going to look very different as we continue to get into Matt Campbell's tenure here. I think this is just kind of the first edition of it. But I think if it's a real, nitty-gritty practice, one-on-ones, stuff that fans actually want to see, I think it could go well. If it's kind of not if it's, I don't want to say it's boring, but if it's kind of the more basic stuff, I don't think fans are going to see that. So it's just going to be interesting to see what they actually put on the field. Because right now it's just do you want your kids to go to the combine and then go to a game, or I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because like the good part if you're Penn State is you have some sickos. You have people that want to show up to watch practice. It's free. And you will still get the money off of that. Guys are going to want to buy their beers and things like that. Those are the 21, of course. People are going to want to get their chicken baskets and things like that. They want to see Matt Campbell. So I think that's a good thing for Penn State. I think staying marketable is going to be key. I think it is a lot different than Iowa State. I do know off of my brief research, because I've been trying to find it for so long and cannot find it. Matt Campbell said they were leaning towards not having one last year, but I don't really see any further updates from there. Maybe they had the game, maybe they didn't. But I mean, the point is, it is a lot different at Penn State. The stakes are a lot different. Any Cyclone fans, if I'm wrong, please don't attack me. You can kindly DM me, but please don't attack me. I obviously have not been to Iowa State. I've been to Iowa. I can say that. I've been to Iowa. I have not been to Iowa State. So I mean, I think this is very key for Penn State, making this as marketable as possible. I know we'll kind of talk about that tomorrow, as in Friday. This is Thursday, they're recording it, so as in Friday, maybe by the time you're watching this, it will be out. We're proposing some ideas for the future of the blue-white game, the blue-white weekend, the blue-white practice, the blue-white extravaganza, the blue-white contest. I'm out of words. I'm out of synonyms. But I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit. Some ideas. I mean, I'll float one out there right now. I mean, involving other sports could be really key. People may not want to see the Penn State football players because they're not going to do anything. But hey, maybe they want to see some legends. Maybe they want to see Todd Blackledge. I mean, you can Kijana Carter. Maybe they want to see
LeVar Arrington versus LeVar Arrington II.
Yes. You have thought about getting into marketing? I mean, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of really good ideas that Penn State could come up with. I think if the Winter Sports Weekend was any example, it's Penn State, or if that weekend was proof. Penn State fans are sickos. They will show up for anything. They will brave the cold. Cold as ice, as they said. It doesn't matter what's going on. We don't know what the weather will be that weekend, but I can guarantee people will still be in the stadium. There will still be more attendance than a lot of people. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that all shapes out. Well, that's all we have for today. For more coverage, visit us at psucollegian.com, follow us on socials, and subscribe to our newsletter for content curated right to your inbox every Friday. Other than that, enjoy everything. I don't know. Enjoy weather. Enjoy life. And we'll see you next time.